getting 6 years, $103 million. Defensive players, it seems like defensive linemen have gotten bigger contracts in this era's NFL, just because it's a more of a happy passing league, pass happy league. That's what I want to say. And so all this receivers, obviously the quarterbacks get the money, but it seems the third tier of players that get the big money behind us, it seems that the receivers and the QBs are defensive tackles, or defensive linemen. How big is this going to go? If someone like Fletcher Cox is going to get $103 million.
I imagine I think it will stay around the $103 to $110 million range for really, really good defensive linemen. I mean, we're talking about people like J.J. Watt, Aaron Donald, who's another defensive tackle whose contract's going to be up relatively soon. I know he has the fifth-year option since he was a first-round pick. But I honestly thought that the Albert Ainsworth deal would kind of turn teams off of wanting to sign defensive tackles to huge deals. For those who don't remember, I think Ainsworth's deal with the Redskins after he left Tennessee was something along the lines of 6 years, $100 million. And this was 6-7 years ago, roughly. And I didn't think that would take, but with the cap increasing by $10 million this year and $10 million the next year, I think that pass rushers and people who are able to really block up that defensive line and really manhandle the offensive line, they're going to get paid. I mean, Von Miller, he's a linebacker, but he's treated like a defensive end. He's a 3-4 linebacker, so he's a pass rusher. I mean, he turned down a 6-year, $114 million deal. I would love to be offered that. I mean, you don't know many players who are offered that deal. So, I mean, the fact that Von Miller is turning it down shows that you really think he can get more, whether it's in the total contract number of 114 or the guaranteed money.
Now, during the break, Andrew, you and I mentioned some teams on the rise. I mean, Jacksonville being one, Tampa having some opportunity, even the Eagles. I mean, they're spending a lot of money. In terms of guaranteed money since January 1st of this year, they've spent about $280 million, which is twice as much as the next team, which would be the Giants at $140 million, and their division rival, the Redskins, $114 million. So that NFC East is going to be really just loaded with star players, and obviously some of it has to do with Josh Norman going from Carolina to Washington. Which team of the ones that you'd brought up, have the potential to maybe do better this season? With Jacksonville, what they've done, with Tampa, what they've done, Philadelphia with their offseason moves and quarterback changes. Which team has the best opportunity to make that positive step forward this season?
So I have two answers for this. I have one that has the best chance to make the playoffs and one that will improve. I think that a lot of people are talking about the Oakland Raiders being the team that's going to be that team taking the next step, that the Raiders are going to make the playoffs. Derek Carr, almost said David Carr, very different players. Derek Carr has played phenomenally well with Oakland. Latavius Murray is a solid running back. Amari Cooper is an amazing young receiver. And this offseason, they focused on bulking up their offensive line. I don't think I actually know how to pronounce his name, but they got the guard from Baltimore, Osmelly, I think his name is.
Yeah.
They got him.
Sounds about right.
They got a couple other players. And they also bulked up on the D-line a bit as well to help with Khalil Mack and the often suspended Alden Smith. He may not play a lot, but when he does play, he is very, very disruptive. So I think that the Raiders have the best chance to improve, but I don't see them making the playoffs this year, unless they're two wild cards from the AFC West. Just because Denver is still going to be a playoff team. They have an amazing defense. Yeah, they're going to have some offensive issues with the new quarterback coming in, whoever wins that position. And I think Kansas City is still a team to be reckoned with. They lost Jamal Charles last season, which was huge. But Alex Smith showed that he's still a good passer. He's still trying to shed that game manager tag, but he's showing that he is a great passer, and that defense is still good. And then the second team I think that's going to make the jump is Jacksonville. And Jacksonville, it comes with them being in a not very good division. Last season, that division was kind of up up in the air, and the Texans grabbed it because Andrew Luck was injured very frequently. Tennessee, Marcus Mariota is starting right now, so they're going to go through some growing pains. He played very well, but he's a rookie, and that team doesn't have a lot of talent around him. Now this season, they're going to have DeMarco Murray as a running back. They brought in some other talent, so Tennessee could be good. But I think Jacksonville, given who they brought in, drafting Jalen Ramsey and Miles Jack, if you had told me before the draft they would be able to get both of those players without trading, I would have been shocked. Then they get Prince Amukamara, cornerback from the Giants. They get Sashawn Gibson, safety from Cleveland. And I know what you're thinking. He's from Cleveland. Can he be that good? Yes, he is that good. Malik Jackson, the defensive tackle from Denver, amazing defensive tackle, huge in their playoff run. Chris Ivory, running back from the Jets. And then Dante Fowler, who's coming back healthy, the rookie from last year. So I think Jacksonville has the best chance to make the playoffs next year, mainly due to their somewhat mediocre division.
So speaking of teams that are going on the rise, we're going to go the opposite direction here. Which teams have lost a lot of players? Besides the Broncos, I know they're going to take a step back. But which team you think will take a big step back and have some issues this season?
So as you mentioned, Denver's probably going to take a step back just because once you win the Super Bowl, a lot of people want to leave for free agency. They got their ring. They kind of want to go where they want, whether it's their home state or it's where they think they'll be valued. I think the team that it's hard to say that they're going to take a step back just because they weren't very good last year. But I think teams like Cleveland, the LA Rams, Philadelphia, I think these are teams that are going to go through some real growing pains. And with the Rams, it's the fact that we don't know how good Jared Goff is going to be. He's a rookie. He had great stats in college, but he didn't win very many games. With Cleveland, RG3 hasn't played at all recently. I think his last start was 2014, if I'm correct on that. And I believe they let go of Travis Benjamin and Ben Hartline as far as receivers go. They have 5 rookie receivers, and most likely 4 of them are going to make the team. They have Terrell Pryor moving from quarterback to receiver. We don't really know how good he's going to be. So I think Cleveland has a lot of issues, and they're definitely going through a rebuilding stage. And with all the draft picks they had, I hope they pay off for Cleveland's sake. And then the last team, Philadelphia. With the Sam Bradford situation, Sam Bradford not holding out, but he didn't show up for practice because of them essentially trading away a lot of draft picks in future years to get Carson Wentz. And the fact that Bradford's only on a 2-year deal, and that they have a new coach in Doug Peterson. And from what I've seen from Doug Peterson as an assistant to Andy Reid, I think he will be a good coach, but there will definitely be a transition from Chip Kelly's very college-heavy offense, which is now in San Francisco, to Doug Peterson's more prototypical West Coast-style offense.
Okay. Andrew, I know you had other things prepared. What other topics on the plate for NFL were you going to throw out here?
The one other one that I wanted to bring up was with OTAs, we don't really hear much about them just because these are players going through very intricate position-based skills, and that doesn't really gravitate for headlines, doesn't really grab the viewer's attention. So one thing I want to bring up is players who are rehabbing right now, and I want to focus on important players to important teams. And what I mean by important teams are teams that made the playoffs last year. So I'll begin with my bias and talk about the Panthers and wide receiver Kelvin Benjamin. Carolina had the number 1 scoring offense last year without the number 1 receiver, Kelvin Benjamin, who the year before had over 1,000 yards his rookie season. Now it's become less impressive for rookie receivers to get 1,000 yards just because so many are doing it now, especially with people like Odell Beckham Jr. doing it. So Kelvin Benjamin, that being said, Benjamin is still a very important threat. He's 6'4", he's 230, he's a very big target for Cam Newton, and I think he's just going to help Carolina's offense even more. So if we can improve on last year's offense, that will be huge with Benjamin returning. The next player I want to talk about is Tyrann Mathieu. He had a very bad leg injury last year, which caused him to miss the NFC Championship game where Carolina won 49-15. If Tyrann Mathieu played, that score would not have been. Arizona would have been much closer. Tyrann Mathieu is a huge difference maker, and he's currently rehabbing right now. And I think if he can get to full strength, he will be huge, and Arizona will make another very deep push in the playoffs this year. The third player is Green Bay Packer wide receiver Jordy Nelson. For the first 6 weeks or so, we saw Aaron Rodgers struggle a bit. He was overthrowing people. It was essentially Randall Cobb and James Jones, and they were lucky they were able to grab James Jones, and that Rodgers and Jones were able to reignite the chemistry they had from when Jones did play with Green Bay before. But Jordy Nelson was definitely missed, and I think Jordy Nelson returning will bring another dimension to Aaron Rodgers' passing attack, and it will probably make Green Bay more of a clear-cut NFC North contender. They were tied with Minnesota for a long time, and they just couldn't get that edge over Minnesota. And the final player, who I mentioned a bit very briefly earlier, is Jamal Charles returning. I think with Jamal Charles returning and Alex Smith trying to shed that game manager label that he's gotten, whether fair or unfair, I think that Jamal Charles coming back will really help Kansas City push and compete with Oakland and Denver for the NFC or AFC West title. No disrespect to San Diego, but I think those are the three clear-cut favorites for that division.
Okay. So we're going to take a short break. When we come back, we're going to talk about some Copa America here. USA making it. What are their chances they can get to the semifinals? They play Ecuador on Thursday. So we have some more music here. Here's Running Wild on the Spicy Sports Show with Sam Stone and Andrew Hammond on Spreaker Radio.